Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. This is the 86th part of What If Deku Was Sanji's Reincarnation, My Heroes Reborn. The author of this great fanfic is Emily. Links to them and original story in the description. Chapter 86, The Captain. UA ended up closing for a few days. On what was to start the new term, it was delayed. After what had just happened was huge. One of their teachers was laid up and a special counselor was also injured. One of their students was kidnapped, though thankfully unharmed psychically, and the top 3 hero students were recovering from remembering their past lives. A lot had happened. Izuku had a lot to deal with as well. He was checked over with the other 4 kidnapped students. He did decide to tell them about All Might's injury. Thankfully he told them very shortly after the fight, so he was able to clear it with All Might to give his fellow kidnappees solace about the All Might fight. That All Might was injured and he had a feeling that he only had one more fight in him. Still, it was something Shindo said. "We still will probably be blamed for ending All Might." He muttered, "Even if know the truth, it still is going to follow us for a long time." While they did exchange phone number, Izuku wasn't expecting to hear from Shindo or Psycho anytime soon. He wouldn't be surprised if he got a text from Kami or Fujio after a month or so once they were able to process everything. Those two seemed like they wanted to be friends either way. Izuku had visited his mom afterward, who gave him the biggest hug she could. While she was horrified he got kidnapped, she could tell it wasn't the kidnapping that hurt him but rather All Might's fight. She did worry about him, but that was normal mom worry. She knew from his past life he was very powerful. He returned to school and thought about everything. He knew he had to visit All Might while he was in the hospital. Thankfully he was sent to the same hospital as the Big 3. So he was given the okay to see his mentor before the first therapy session with the Big 3. "So you're going to tell him?" asked Katsuki on the way to the hospital. Izuku nodded. "Good, because you really need to," said Katsuki. Once they got to the hospital they met with Hibiki. Had some bandages but seemed fine. Aoi was with him. "Okay, before Izuku goes to see his dad," said Hibiki. Izuku face-palmed at that description. "I need to explain the possible plans," said Hibiki, "just in case there's bad blood between Togata and you two." Izuku and Katsuki nodded. "First off, have you talked about possible people he might be?" said Hibiki. "We haven't gotten the chance," said Izuku. "All I know is that he did have a devil fruit and he can use hockey," said Aoi. "Yeah," muttered Katsuki. "If there's bad blood between you two, then Aoi will be hired to be their counselor. In a few years we'll work on it so that you two will at least be civil, but for now it's best to be separated if you do have a bad history in your past life," said Hibiki. The two nodded. "Though if it's the molten bastard I don't think we should," muttered Izuku in Sanji mode. Katsuki nodded in agree. There was no way they could ever get along with the person they were referring to. Even if they were on the same side in this life. He was one of those people, it didn't matter if he was good person. "You're going to have to explain who that is," said Hibiki. "We know," sighed Izuku and Katsuki. "But if it's someone you got along with or someone who was neutral to you guys, then it will be fine," said Hibiki. They nodded. "Since that's out of the way, it will be an hour until the meeting," said Hibiki, "so do whatever you want until then." "An hour?" asked Mashireo. Toru pointed to Izuku. "Oh right," said Mashireo with a sweat drop. Once everyone separated, Izuku headed to All Might's room. The guards were informed of him coming over to visit and he was let. All Might was sitting in his bed. He had a conversation Gran Torino earlier about what was learned involving Shigaraki. That he shouldn't be seen a victim but as a villain. After all, he did kill a lot of people, even if he was Nana's grandson. That was when there was knock on the door. "Come in," he said. Of course it was Izuku. "Young Midoriya," said All Might, lighting up. "I asked Recovery Girl and she gave the okay to bring your favorite." said Izuku. All Might lit up even more. Much better than all of the hospital food I've been getting, he said. Izuku laughed as he placed down the container. Both of them sighed. It's not your fault, said All Might. I know, even if other people might blame me, you told me you only have one fight left in you, said Izuku, but at least it was against him and not some random villain. All Might nodded, glad that Izuku saw it that way. There's something I need to tell you about, said Izuku. What? Asked All Might. Remember what I said when you first told me about All for One, said Izuku. All Might remembered how the conversation turned to his health and mentioned something about last time. You're ready to tell me, aren't you? Asked All Might. It's about Luffy and how he died, said Izuku. Meanwhile, Hibiki knocked on the door to Togata's room. I'm coming in anyways, said Hibiki. He entered the room and found Togata doing stretches on his bed. So someone's bored, said Hibiki. Yeah. He laughed, I've seen you around school. Yeah. I'm a special counselor for the victims of Priestess in Class 1A, said Hibiki. I'm Hibiki Kenzoku, also known as Orchestra Rave. Oh, said Togata. There was a few seconds as Togata processed it. Oh, that explains all of the weird memories in my head, he said. Yeah, you were hit by her quirk, and so you were your friends, said Hibiki. However, Togata then got worried. Wait, did they fight back? I don't remember anything, said Togata. Nijire-chan did, and it wasn't indiscriminate, so she'll remain a hero for sure, while Sun Eater didn't, said Hibiki. Togata's face fell after hearing that. What Hibiki didn't know was the two were best friends since childhood. However, he was able to reassure Togata. However, there's a very rare fourth category that wasn't spread around when it came to priestess reactions while in the feral stage, said Hibiki, as it only happened once before we didn't spread it around. What is it? Asked Togata. Run, hide, and plan, said Hibiki, and that's what happened to Sun Eater. His instinct wasn't to fight, it was to strategize. Granted, when you're feral and not in your right mind it's really difficult, but considering the only other person this happened to is not only still a hero but one of my closest friends means that he's probably going to remain a hero. Good, I was going to make him remain a hero if that wasn't the case, said Togata with a big grin. Okay then, said Hibiki with a sweat drop. Yeah, it's just that I know how to persuade people like that in my past life, laughed Togata. If he wanted someone to join his crew in his past life, he would get them to join. It especially worked for his past life swordsman and cook after all. Well, speaking of your past life, said Hibiki, I allowed myself more time to talk to you. Really? Asked Togata. It's not just the fact you were only one in your group that didn't know Priestess was there, but also something else. You're not the only person from your past life's world here. How do you know? Asked Togata. You used hockey, said Hibiki. You know about hockey, said Togata. 2 other reincarnations from that world were found. Both of them in 1A2. One in the initial batch while the other was the one who got hit during the camp attack, said Hibiki. Both of them can use hockey, and not only that but they told us about the pirate world as we're currently dubbing it. Sky Island's cyborgs, a starfish that though he was human so he learned to talk. Yeah, Papagu, laughed Togata. Hibiki's sweat dropped at this but then coughed. But yeah, I also know that the two had a lot of enemies, said Hibiki, and depending on the situation, we might have to you and those two separate for the time being. Togata blinked and realized he had a point. There would be bad blood between him and many people in his past life, and he would probably want to smack around certain people if they remembered. What will determine how it's handled is the way you answer this question, said Hibiki. Okay, said Togata. What was your relationship with the pirate crew, the Straw Hat Pirates? Asked Hibiki. Togata was caught off guard. What do you mean? He asked. Were you enemies or allies, or just knew of them didn't really care? Said Hibiki. Oh, that was my crew. Said Togata. What? Said Hibiki. I was the captain. Said Togata. Back in All Might's room. During the early years, two things happened to Luffy that severally shortened his lifespan. The first thing was that he created a move called Gear 2. It allowed him to greatly increase his metabolism, giving him super speed, but at a cost. If he used too long, it would start to shorten his lifespan. He got better at using it so that it didn't do that, but it still did it. The other was that he got badly poisoned. Someone, said Izuku, who spat out the word someone like it was garbage, had a cure but took off 10 years off his lifespan. You must really hate that person. Said All Might. Oh, I do hate him, but it has nothing to do with that incident. Said Izuku, starting to chew on a toothpick. It has to do with something he did to me in my past life. If it weren't for him, Luffy would have died during that incident instead of many years later. I'm grateful for that, but I still hate the guy for other reasons. The fact that he was on fire didn't help. Young Midoriya. Said All Might. Izuku's sweat dropped as he put out the flames. He must really hate this person. Thought All Might with a sweat drop. But those two things combined. Said Izuku, once the flames were put out, he was fine for many years, but then his health started to decline. He hid it, but I noticed. Because he was losing his appetite. At first he ate less during meals, then he wasn't craving snacks as much. He also stopped trying to break into the fridge. By the end of it, he was only eating 3 meals and a snack a day. All Might blinked at him. Okay, that sounds normal, but for Luffy it was really worrying. He ate like an elephant. Said Izuku, and had powers that gave him a body made of rubber so that his stomach stretched, so he rarely ever got full before then. I see. Said All Might. The only ones that knew were his wife and ship's doctors. Said Izuku, but still I had to watch him slowly waste away, then reveal how sick he was, and not too long later turn himself in as a form of assisted suicide. He what? Said All Might, sweating. It's true, he decided to go out on his own terms. Sighed Izuku, who entered Sanji mode, and it was a giant middle finger the world government too. Yeah, they killed him, but he ended up jump-starting another golden age of piracy. All Might watched as Izuku, however, left Sanji mode and started to shake. It's been years though, but, said Izuku, who started to cry. All Might got up and hugged Izuku. Don't worry. I'm still here. He reassured his protege. Izuku still cried though. Back in Togata's room. You were the captain? Asked Hibiki. Yeah. Said Togata, why is the crew so important? I know it was a really famous crew, but... You know what, just hold tight for an hour, all I will say, you'll like the results. Said Hibiki, I should really talk to your friends. Said Hibiki. He left behind a countdown clock for when the session was. My assistant will tell you where the room is when it's time. Said Hibiki. He left the room and a very confused Togata behind. So 3 of them. Said Hibiki. Then Aiko began to cackle. What is it? Asked Hibiki. You really forgot, didn't you? Asked Aiko. Forget what? Asked Hibiki. I'm telling you. Said Aiko. Whatever, I still have to do my job. Said Hibiki. First off. Said Aiko, something else you forgot. What? Asked Hibiki. Hibiki. Said Aoi. Oh yeah. Said Hibiki, you're not needed as my backup, they won't be fighting. Really, are you sure? Asked Aoi. I'm positive. Said Hibiki. Unfortunately, all of the good mood hadn't helped his terrible memory. The memory that Luffy was a giant chaos magnet. Back inside All Might's room, Izuku had calmed down. Izuku would have apologized, but he saw the look on his mentor's face as if saying, you don't have to apologize. I can see why my health is affecting you that way, said All Might. Izuku nodded. Have you told the group yet? Asked All Might. No, only Kaken knows, and that's only because, said Izuku. All Might nodded, because he also had the memories that Izuku had, but figured that his experiences were different in watching the captain waste away like that. I might be retired, but you don't have worry, said All Might. I'm not going away anytime. Why does it feel like you're lying? Said Izuku in Sanji mode. All Might didn't answer, but thankfully they had another topic they had to deal with. On the bright side, you don't have to worry about All for One, said All Might. Well, hopefully anytime soon, said Izuku. He's Tartarus, there is no way that he is getting, said All Might. However, his words died when Izuku gave him another deadpan look. There was an unescapable prison in your past life, wasn't there? Asked All Might. There were a few escapes I heard about, one of them was a mass escape that Luffy led, said Izuku. I thought he turned himself in, said All Might with a sweat drop. No, this happened years before he did that, said Izuku. Actually, that was the same incident where he got poisoned. Oh, said All Might. He actually broke into the prison to rescue someone, said Izuku. I see, said All Might. He's going to break out sooner or later, said Izuku. You're right, said All Might. I think I was just trying to reassure both of us. Izuku nodded. But when it inevitably happened, I'll be ready for him, said Izuku. All Might nodded. Izuku sighed, knowing that All Might would avoid why it felt like it was lying. So about those other students? Asked All Might. I don't think I'm going to talk to two of them for a long time, said Izuku, but the other two seem interested being my friends. All Might chuckled. Is that girl you carried and that boy who made a baby carrier? Asked All Might. Yeah, laughed Izuku. The rest of the conversation was him telling how Fujio actually was the relative of a retired hero who was a priestess victim. After that part of the conversation, Izuku left for the session. Young Midoriya, good luck, said All Might. Izuku nodded, knowing he was referring to the guy from his past life's world. As he headed to the room that was set up, he found Katsuki. Hey, said Izuku. You tell him? Asked Katsuki. I did, said Izuku with a nod. Finally, muttered Katsuki. Izuku grabbed Katsuki's arm, knowing that he was probably trying to find the room. By way, what were you going to do if I didn't tell him after the month was up? Asked Izuku. It doesn't fucking matter anymore, so drop it, muttered Katsuki. Izuku's sweat dropped. The two entered the room hoping that the session would end well. But of course they didn't know that the person they were worried about wasn't an enemy but rather the treasured captain that Izuku just told his mentor about. And because of that, they were unaware of the roller coaster of emotion they were going to be on when it came to be both joy and quite a bit of fear. Because those are going to be the two biggest things that they were going to feel in that session for sure. That will be it for this part. I hope everyone enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like and comment if you want part 87. If you want to hear more from me, subscribe. I hope to see you all in the next one.